Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about two GoPro settings that can have a dramatic effect on your videos: light balance and exposure. Have you had footage where the first 2 seconds looks amazing, but then flattens out? I have, and this got me thinking, could I get that awesome look all the time? Let's look at the footage that made me stop and say, I need to figure this out. I need to figure out what's going on here. I grabbed 3 frames from the beginning of this recording to show how the GoPro corrected itself. I admit, I've had my white balance set to auto for the past year. I was mainly focused on balancing the exposure setting to match the light of the day. Looking back at some footage, like the Patreon ride with Seth, it was proving difficult to correct the color. While I was able to make it work, it took a long time, so it's time to figure out how to make that recorded footage look better to start with. To get started, you're going to need Pro Tune turned on. This unlocks the white balance setting. White balance essentially is the temperature of the image, with the lower Kelvin rating being the cooler blue range, and getting warmer, more orange as you increase the value. Here I'm using my smartphone to demonstrate how the change overlays the image. You could use this to get a quick ballpark of the settings before you film, but I really recommend checking the final image on the GoPro itself. If you find that your trails dip in and out of the sun often, you're going to find your camera hunting for the right setting, and chances are you're moving fast enough that you're probably in the wrong setting most of the time. Check out this footage from Brian Kennedy's trip to Moab. The bright sun and the orange rocks proved more than the automatic compensation could handle. He told me later that he did change his white balance to manual after seeing this footage. On most sunny days, you can manually set this to 5500K and you'll see a big improvement in the consistency between the lighting conditions. This effect is also a function of the exposure settings, but exposure is not a setting that you're going to lock down. You can adjust the compensation, which will allow you to favor a darker or lighter image though. Let's talk further about that exposure. Unless it's a dark day or night, I'm always on the negative side of the exposure, usually -1, maybe down to a -1.5. This is a good time to remind you that you can use the GoPro app to see how these settings apply to the image in real time. I often grab a few minutes of footage, stop and play it back to make sure I'm happy with the settings. ISO, or ISO, is another factor in the exposure triangle. It controls the camera's sensitivity to light. The less light there is, the higher the ISO should be. But this comes at a cost. The higher the ISO, the more grain is introduced into your image. I've been locking the ISO as low as the camera will allow it. The Hero 4 Black is set at 400 and max, only when filming at night will I raise it to 800. The Hero 4 is just not great in low light. The final piece of the puzzle is the shutter speed. We're going to leave that set to automatic. I'm still testing this to see if there's any real gains to setting it manually, because it's very easy to ruin your footage. Okay, let's recap what we discussed. White balance, while typically doing an acceptable job in automatic, can be used to adjust your image from OK to awesome. For a sunny day, we'll typically start around 5500K. We also drop the exposure to help get that deep, rich look. Start around -1 and see how it looks before filming for hours. We want to use the lowest ISO setting we can get away with, and we're going to leave the shutter speed on auto. We'll be talking about ND filters to take this one step further. ND, or neutral density filters, act like sunglasses for your camera and allow you to achieve looks that cannot be obtained just from the settings alone. So make sure you subscribe to my new YouTube channel called MTB Film School, not to miss out on that. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.